Ho ho ho, Angela Larson's film review channel coming down the chimney with a review of a new Christmas movie. The name of this movie is Violent Night. Silent Night? No. Violent Night? Yes. Spoiler free review. So if you're like me, then you see the premise of a violent action comedy with Santa Claus as some kind of like ancient heroic warrior saving a family who's getting robbed by high-tech bad guys. Sounds like a pretty good movie. And this movie is pretty good, but it kind of just does the bare minimum to satisfy the promise of that great high concept. Alright, spoiler review. So this movie starts off and Santa Claus is getting drunk. And the bartender is like, wait a minute, come back here. And she follows him to the roof. And then Santa Claus takes off on his sleigh. And then he vomits from the sky onto the bartender's face. And then it's like Violent Night. But the title screen, it's all like chintzy and CGI. It looks like a Hallmark movie title screen. And that kind of sets you up. This is an edgy Christmas action comedy with vomit and gross stuff, but it's a little bit chintzy and cheap. Santa Claus is drinking a lot because he's disappointed in the people, because the people are more often naughty than nice nowadays. Santa Claus is a reformed Viking warrior or something that used to have a big hammer and smash people's heads in, but he hasn't beaten people up in a long time and he's kind of out of the game. But he gets back into the game because a Santa Claus believer, a very special little girl, her family's in trouble. Her family just so happens to be one of the richest families in America. Their house is getting robbed. They have $300 million in the basement, and John Leguizamo and his crew of roughnecks are coming to get it. Santa Claus just so happens to stumble upon the roughnecks when he comes down the chimney, and he gets mixed up in everything, and he's just defending himself at first. But eventually he takes it upon himself to get back into the swing of things, pick the hammer back up, and take down these roughnecks and John Leguizamo. The action is the best part of the movie. The humor is not so great. The kind of humor you're going to see is the stuff like the aforementioned Santa Claus vomiting because he's drunk, or stuff like the rich family has a member that's a annoying influencer teenager. As I was watching this movie, I was like, this reminds me a bit of 2022's earlier Bullet Train, which was an action comedy with a gimmick. Surprise, surprise, I get to the end credits of this movie, and there's David Leitch, Bullet Train's director, of John Wick fame, listed as one of the producers. Bullet Train and these are the kinds of movies that I want to go see, and I don't regret having watched them, but I wish they could have been just a little bit better than they were. It's missing a spark. There's a laziness to the writing, there's a laziness to the plotting, there's a laziness to the humor, and I mean the action itself, the action has weight to it. There's some nice choreography, but there's no like exceptional set piece where I'm like, wow, that's an amazing piece of action and a great action film. I think maybe David Leitch needs to go do some ayahuasca. Someone involved in the production of these movies and the plotting and the writing, they need to expand their minds. I really don't want to hate on the movie, but we're getting to the point in 2022. There's a lot of wild concepts for movies that are making it to the screen. You need more than just a crazy concept and the bare minimum production-wise to really make a dent in my heart. John Leguizamo was pretty good. There were a couple of times when he got angry and shouted. David Harbour wasn't bad as Santa Claus. He seemed to have a good time pretending to be drunk and doing pee gags and vomit gags. It gets into a final duel between John Leguizamo and Santa Claus, and that's one of the more inspired parts of the movie. Santa Claus has this gimmick where he gets up chimneys by he presses on his nose and a little spark happens, and then he gets sucked up a chimney by magic. And he's holding on to John Leguizamo next to a chimney that has like a weird top where it gets smaller at the top, and he does this while he's holding on to John Leguizamo. John Leguizamo gets squeezed to death by the chimney as he gets sucked through it. Another good part of the movie is Santa Claus gets wounded. He has a knife wound, and there's this kind of dramatic scene where he dresses his wound with a Christmas ornament. There's like a wooden Christmas ornament, and he puts the ornament in his mouth to clamp down on, and he takes the hook of the ornament and he sews his wound back up. And there's this like chanting music playing, and it's pretty haunting. But that's definitely not the vibe that is predominant in the film. Another perfunctory David Leitch production. I only recommend it to people that are desperate for this kind of content, like me. If you want to see hardcore violence, this is definitely a violent movie. It's a violent night at the movies.